Well, my name is Francisco Treviño. I was born in Monterrey, Mexico, and I lived there 11 years. So when I was 11, my parents moved to, well, my dad was already here in Oklahoma, and then so we moved with my mom and other brothers to Tulsa, Oklahoma in 1978. So, went to school. Back in those days, there weren't that many Hispanics. So in school, I was the only Hispanic there. And so learning English was a key to really know what's going on. So in about 3 months after I started going to school, I pretty much understood everything. Still had struggling with my English, but I could understand. So that kind of helped. And so at age 13, I started playing the guitar. And then, as I grew up, I started learning a lot of the songs like the Beatles, Cat Stevens, all that music. I really wasn't into the Mexican music at all. When you're young, you kind of tend to rebel to the music your parents listen to. So Mexican music was not on my radar. And so started going to school here and got involved at age 19, got involved in volunteering in the schools to translate for some of the parents. And a teacher at Columbus Elementary, now now Dolores Huerta Elementary, invited me to go to her school and to translate and then help her with some of the Hispanic students. That's when I started taking my guitar and just playing some music. Back in those days, I didn't know any children music, so I started learning a couple of songs that I could do with them. And then after that, other schools invited me to go to their class and just played. And when I was about 21, Georgia Williams from the Arts and Humanities called me and said, back then we didn't have the cell phones. So she called me at work and I was kind of busy and she said, we can pay you for that. And I said, yeah, whatever. So I just listened to her. I wasn't rude or anything like that, so I hung up. But she was very persistent, and she called me back. And the first thing she did, let's just meet face to face so we can talk and to show you what we do. At that time, I didn't know about the Oklahoma Arts Council. I didn't know anything of these programs for artists. And so she talked to me and talked me into it, doing a performance. And also some presentations in some of the schools. So I started doing the Mexican music and culture. At that time, as I mentioned a while ago, I didn't know too much about the Mexican music. And so I started learning about the roots of Mexican music, especially the traditional Mexican music. I never was too fond of the new stuff. I liked the old stuff because it had a story behind it, like the Mexican Revolution songs. It had a special meaning at that time for some of those songs. So it had a story behind the song. And I had my presentation of the Mexican music and culture. Then I started working on another presentation for the schools. It's called Latin American Children Music. And that's when I really started learning more about the traditional children music, because I grew up in the schools listening to this type of music, dancing in elementary school to this type of music. And so throughout the years, I started learning more and more about the different types of songs, different types of rhythms from Mexico and then Central America, then learning of the songs. And then I had another presentation of Mexico as I see it. It was sort of like a presentation of pictures of the big cities, Monterrey, Mexico City, Guadalajara. And I would explain to the kids, this is Mexico. And it was kind of strange to think that the kids thought that Mexico was all dirt and dirt roads, and they didn't have anything, just nothing. But I would take pictures of the McDonald's, the restaurants and hotels and Coca-Cola and all this, things that we are so used to seeing here. And so it was sort of like an eye-opener for them to know that Mexico was more than what they thought it was. And so throughout the years, I started doing more children music. I started writing my own music and back in the early 90s. And I did, well, back then it was a tape. It wasn't CD, it was tape. I started doing, I recorded an album of original songs with those rhythms in English and Spanish. But you know, as I started learning more about the songs and the old songs, some songs that I've never heard before, it was kind of neat because back in those days, I used to go to the libraries and check out the records. And that's where I found a lot of the old songs that were pretty much lost. Because you couldn't find them. Even if you go to Mexico, you go to the record store, they only had the new stuff. I mean, you had to go and really dig deep in trying to find this traditional Latin American children music. And sometimes you couldn't even find it. I would ask friends of mine and cousins in Monterrey, I said, you know, find me some of this music. And they couldn't even find it, you know. So the library system for me in those days helped me a lot in trying to learn a lot of the songs from, you know, Argentina, from Chile, from you know, Central America and Mexico. It was kind of neat, and I thought, wow, this resources of the library, and it was checking out the records. Now they have everything digitalized, so it's really a good resource to find out about all this. Now, of course, obviously we have Google and all that stuff, so it's a lot easier to find out about the history behind the songs. You know, the work that I do right at the moment, well, there's different things. It wasn't that I just thought about doing this yesterday. I've been doing this since I was about 19, off and on. But the work that I'm doing now is really kind of rescuing this type of tradition of you know, children's music that people are beginning to lose their essence. You know, when I grew up, in the schools, you will hear this music, children music, and it created memories. And so I go back, whenever I hear these songs, oh, I remember I used to dance that song, you know, El Ratón Vaquero, you know, and La Bamba, and during Mother's Day, that we'll sing this song, you know, and so it brings me back. Obviously, I came here when I was 11. That's when pretty much everything stopped. But I got really into it because people will tell me, you know, whenever they listen to this music, it takes them back to their homeland when they were kids. I have a radio program that is called El Espacio del Tío Pancho. It's every Saturday morning from 8 a.m. to 10. And I play all this music, traditional music, children's music. And every once in a while I play the new stuff as well. But the new stuff is not called children's music, it's called family music, which is okay, you know, but I like the old traditional stuff. But anyway, some of the songs that I play are from the 1930s, you know, and I get calls from, like, for example, I got one call one time. It was, I think it was a 65-year-old man, and I was playing the song, and he called me, and he said, you know, I'm really glad that you're doing this because it's taking me back. Because I remember when my grandfather used to sit me on his lap and sing me this song. And I think it was called Conejo Blas, an old song from Cri Cri. And I said, well, you know, this is why we do this show. Because nowadays, children are growing up without being children. And you can, you know, you can find your own experience whenever you go to a children's party. All you hear is dance music and, you know, happy music, but it's not traditional, you know. So you're not creating that atmosphere for the kids. You're not creating those memories for these children on their Christmas, on their parties, children's parties. And so, you know, this is why I do this program, so you can maybe perhaps share with your grandkids, with your sons and daughters, that you used to play and sing these songs. Now you get the opportunity to share this with your kids. And so, especially, when people here in Oklahoma that are undocumented can go back to their country of origin. So now they are here, growing up with their own kids. They were born here, American citizens, but they're growing up without listening to this type of music because it's rarely available. And so I try to keep it alive either with the radio program or the presentations that I do in the schools. I think I've always been intrigued of the music, because I think I put myself in the shoes of the person that wrote the song. I was like, okay, because whenever you write a song, it has a process. You sit down with the guitar, maybe perhaps an idea comes up, and then you have to sit down and write the lyrics, and then you have to practice the songs, and then you record the song, and then you perform the song. And whenever people enjoy that piece of work you created, or that person created, it brings back those memories, especially when the songs were written back in the mid-30s, 40s or 50s or 60s. It always brings back those memories. So I thought about some of the people that would, whenever I would perform in some of the schools, that would come up to me and said, I'm really glad you're doing this. But they're only thinking me, but then they go back home and they're not doing their job to teach their children about this type of music. Because I remember one time I went to this school, I think it was Kendall Whittier Elementary. And this kid was so happy because he was singing a song which is called El Corrido, but it was one of those newer songs that's talking about cartels and drugs and all this. And I said, well, I bet your parents are very proud of you listening to this type of music, but it's not his fault. It's the parents' fault. And I think it's the parents need to let the kids be kids and teach them about these traditions, which we all grew up with. Let's not lose them, especially when you leave your country to come to the United States, and then here you lose your culture. You're not learning anything about new things that are going on, and then of course you're not teaching your kids how to be proud of your ethnicity and your culture, and so this is one of the reasons why I dedicated myself to do this traditional, Latin American children music. Hopefully parents, they can learn some of these songs and maybe perhaps enjoy them so much that they can have their kids listen to those. And of course the schools, I'm hoping that the schools would take the time to, not put music of the YMCA or the macho for kids to dance, but this actually children music, traditional children music that they could dance to. And believe me, you will start creating these memories for these children in the schools. I think, defining the culture is because I think kids nowadays are not growing up knowing their culture. They're growing up as Americans, and they may see their parents listening to this other new music, but to me it's like they're just getting a little something here that is talking about their culture, but they're not getting the whole picture. So it's kind of a new entity that you are learning about yourself, that you have inside, but you don't know is there. If you don't know the history of your culture, you grow up without identity. Especially in a country that is not your own. We have in the United States, we have many types of immigrants from different countries. And so whenever they come here, they tend to kind of forget about their history. And so I think it's very important to to know your history, to know your culture, and then have your kids know about your culture, your traditions, because once you lose all that, you become just anybody. You know, you have no identity. So I think it's very important for the Hispanic community to know not just the traditional children music, but to know their music, their history, where they came from. You know, you go to the schools nowadays, you ask the kids, you know, you say, who's from Mexico? And, you know, a lot of them raise their hands. What part of Mexico? They don't know. They don't know. And so I say, well, what about your parents? Are they from Mexico? They go, I think so. What state, you know? Well, you know what state it is? No. And so it's sad that the parents are not teaching their kids their history, their roots, you know, because they're going to lose their identity. I try to write songs that are traditional. They have that traditional sound. You know, on my second album, I actually went to Mexico and recorded this album, and I played the jarana, the guitar, guitarrón. I hire local musicians, but I try to write the songs like place myself back in 1930 or 1940, and just try to not reinvent, but take some of those styles and to add them into my songs. And so it's always nice that you can find a little twist. I'm not stealing their ideas, but those ideas inspired me to write this new song that sounds classic. So, you know, that's one of the things. If the song sounds classic, it could last forever. But if the song is a song that parents are not going to like, or the parents are going to get tired of, the song is no good. You know, because I tend to write songs that the parents are going to listen when they're in their 20s, 30s, 40s, and even when they're 80s. They can still listen to this song and not get tired of. Well, you know, I tend to do urban stories, the old urban stories, and they're very hard to find sometimes, you know, because you don't want to publish a work on YouTube, whatever, that is written and you don't have permission to write. And so I actually, there was some stories that I really enjoyed reading on internet. And so I asked permission if I could record them. Now they kind of, whenever you record it, send it to us and we'll link it to our webpage. So it's kind of nice that they give you permission to do this, because they're stories that nobody knows who wrote, the urban legends. Some are the old traditional, the Aztecs, the Indians, the old traditions from Central and Mexico. And I actually did one from the Native American. And so I find the story, it's children's stories, and they can be too long. So I think the most is maybe about 4 or 5 minutes. And so I record them, I put background music, and then I tell a little story, and people really do enjoy them. And so that's one of them. The other one is to take this work and take them to schools, Oklahoma City as well, not just Tulsa, and try to still find out more about other songs. Let's see, about 3 weeks ago, I heard another song from Ella Jenkins. It's an old traditional song from the state of Guerrero. You know, it's kind of a need to rediscover this music that Ella Jenkins did back in the mid '60s, and this song was there. And just recently, I just discovered it. It's in iTunes, on iTunes. But they're there, but sometimes people don't know it's there just because it's Ella Jenkins. Oh, people think, oh, it's old English songs. But no, she's got some other stuff. I don't think I have a favorite song, but there's I'm more of a kind of a mellow kind of. But one of my favorite songs that I do in the schools is San Serení. And it's one of my favorite because it's talking about different types of occupations. The one that I told you is, dates back, 19th century and adapted by Puerto Rico. But I like that song because you can change the lyrics. You can change the lyrics from a zapatero, a shoemaker, a baker, the nurse, the doctor. It just keeps going on and on. As I was telling you, this song is San Serení. It's the melody dates back to from the 1900s, 19th century. I'm sorry, and but adapted by Puerto Rico. So this is called San Serení. That's talking about different occupations. San Serení de la buena, buena vida, hacen así, así los panaderos, así, 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 así me gusta a mí. San Serení de la buena, buena vida, hacen así, así los panaderos, así, 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 así me gusta a mí. San Serení de la buena, buena vida, hacen así, así las enfermeras, así, 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 así me gusta a mí. San Serení de la buena, buena vida, hacen así, así las doctoras, así, 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 así me gusta a mí. I think once they start, I tell you from experience that whenever they see me perform, especially some Hispanic teachers, they have seen me perform. They come to me after the show and say, I'm really glad you're doing this because nobody's doing this, and it's really neat to take my kids, my children here in the schools, to have them learn about this because I grew up with this music. So I think it takes them back to the childhood memories. I keep going back to the memories. And, nowadays, as I was telling you, nowadays children are growing up without creating those memories. And so, maybe in 30, 40 years, they're going to go back and say, Macho Man was that's the song that I remember. But it's not a children's song, so they were listening to other songs that they were not intended to be children music, I used to listen to, even in Monterey, I used to listen to the Beatles, Kiss, AC/DC. So the schools, I remember the schools during the recreo, which is basically the break. Over there it's a little bit different. The schools are different areas, and everybody gets in the middle, where they have the stage, and they play basketball and all this. But in the background they will play this music, So that brings back memories because here we are, fifth, sixth grade, listening. The whole school is listening to this music. So he's creating these memories, and I go back to that, creating memories as children, because those are the ones that stay with you for the rest of your life, and it takes you back to a nice memories of your childhood. And so that is one of the reasons why, like I said, I do this, because I know that it brings back memories for not just me, but for many people. I haven't seen anybody. I mean, people may do one song or two songs, but the ones that I do are traditional songs from Cri Cri and some other artists, and some are just songs that people don't know where they came from. It was just adapted by a country or an island, and it became their own. But it has also a story that it most likely came from Spain before they came to Americas. With the urban stories, I just a little bit, but the story says it all. When I do the songs and record them, yes, I give a little story of the history of the song and the writer. And as a matter of fact, I connected to the grandson of Francisco Gabilondo Soler, Cri Cri, the character. He started a radio show in October 15th, 1934, and he presented several of those songs in that day. But he wasn't Cri Cri at the time. Cri Cri became 2 weeks after that in his radio program. The radio program was a 15-minute program with no advertisers at the time, and from there it grew, and the program lasted, I think, to the mid '60s. So it was very popular in Mexico. So I connected with his grandson, and Oscar, and he has a book of the stories of all these songs, because a lot of the songs are talking about his grandmother, the little fountain, it was in the middle of the house, and he's talking about the little ugly doll, la muñeca fea, and he's got a history of those. And it's really, I interviewed him in my radio program, and it was really neat to listen to the history of these songs that I grew up with, and he had been long gone, when I was listening to his music. And so it's really, I'm eager to learn more about this music, and eager to write more on this type of work that I think is part of it is dying. And so it inspires me to keep going and to spread the word in Oklahoma, and perhaps even other states, for parents to listen to this music, and the kids also to really enjoy. Most of the work that I do is just go and just find whatever's out there. It's not a specific person or writer that I do. My wife tells me, because she has several books about the conquistadores, and I started reading some of those things from those letters from the Saint Francis priest and all that, and they're very interesting letters. But sometimes some of those letters are not fond of or nice to the natives. So I try not to see that, or because it might influence the way it might influence the work that I do. So I just go out in the internet, because it's not like a one book tells all. It's just you find a little piece here, and then I try to remember that piece or write it down. It's kind of neat, because I have a paper that said just basically stories about children's music, and I just collect all that through there, and then every once in a while I read it, and sometimes it's just information that nobody knows who wrote. To rescue this type of work, it is very important. If I don't do it, somebody else is going to do it. but when, I don't know. And so I'm on the right road at the moment. I'm not with, folk at the road. I don't. I think I know that I'm at the right road, right for our culture. And I think it's right for Oklahoma to know more about this. We did, I think twice before the pandemic, we did bilingual story time. And as a matter of fact, I was proud that I was the first artist at the Gathering Place to do a bilingual story time. So, but in another place, we did the bilingual story time where I get a couple of Hispanic leaders to read a story. And then I will do some songs. And then we'll invite the Children's Ballet Folklorico to do some Mexican dances. So it was really, people, and the reason I invite the Children's Ballet Folklorico is because they bring out their parents. Everybody, the parents, their grandparents, their uncles, everybody's watching. So automatically you have a crowd. And so whenever you have a crowd, the people tend to pay more attention instead of just somebody, this is boring, But no, but whenever you keep it active and with the dancing, the music, and the bilingual story time, everybody just kind of tends to go with the flow. Yeah, the version of Guadalupe, which is coming up next month, I've done that for, I think I was about 21 participating year to year. But in 2016, I had some health issues. And so, I was at home recuperating. And once I was able to go into my studio because there's some steps. I couldn't get down the steps. And so once I started going to my studio at home, I started writing this song. And I wrote this song, Hoy Aumenta Mi Fe. It's a spiritual song talking about, that I'm here looking for you and, just other words. So anyway, I showed it to the priest at my church, and he was just kind of looking up, and he's very theatrical, and he's always thinking about how can he present this music or this other things that he's always planning to do different things. So he heard the song, and he goes, "Let's present that song, in December 12th." During the version of Guadalupe. So I thought, a month, and I still haven't really finished the song. It had a few changes here and there, very few. The song was written and recorded, but it had a few things. So I changed it, and when I write the song, I always do, start date, and I put a date, and then when I think, this song is done, so I put a date. And it was kind of neat because I finished the song, performed it in December 12th, and then about a month later, I looked at my notebook where I wrote, when I wrote the song, and the date that I finished, the last part of it, was November 12th, which I thought, that's neat. I presented it a month after that, after I finished. And so anyway, so we do this song every year now since 2016, and so I start the song with some drums, and then you see all these matlachines coming, every matlachine. So you can imagine the church, filled before pandemic, filled with all these matlachines, the Indian dancers, over 100, dancers, and they come in and they, while I'm performing the song, it's really neat. It's just kind of, the first time I played it, it's just kind of like, wow, this is amazing. And so I do that. And then some of the other projects that we're working on is obviously Casa de la Cultura. So one of the things that we plan to do with Casa de la Cultura is to bring these games, we'll just go to the park, and we'll start playing some of these games. And hopefully people can still come out and learn about these games. Even some of those games I remember I was telling this lady, I said, this is the plan that I have to do this type of games. And she just started talking about all these games that she used to play when she was young in Mexico City. And I was so intrigued because some of these games I haven't heard before. And so she started explaining. I said, I need to talk more to this lady because she has a valuable information that we can share to the Hispanic community. And I'm sure she's not the only one. You know, there are many people that would like to do more. And so I tend to utilize the knowledge of the Hispanic community to bring it to life with Casa de la Cultura and other entities, you know, the library system, you know, because one of the things that we plan to do with, I was telling you, with the games, is to take the bookmobile and take all these books. I mean, be selective on the books you choose to take on the bookmobile, and then you say, have an event there in the park. We just show up, you know, flash mob, you know, in a way. And we'll see what happens. We did that in Mexico City when we went to a small town. I went with Channel 8, and they were doing a report, and they come to work. I said, you know, let's just go stand in the middle of the plaza in a small town in Casablanca, Zacatecas. And he said, why are we going to be in the middle? I said, look, they'll come out. And sure enough, we stood in the middle in front of the church. Here comes some of the kids, and it was kind of neat because they had connections in Tulsa. But it was kind of neat that they came out, you know, with TU caps, OU shirt, you know. So we automatically saw the connection. So whenever you do this, we're hoping that automatically they'll connect with some of those games. And if they haven't seen those games, well, believe me, these games are better than a cell phone. And then in our webpage, Casa de la Cultura Tulsa.org, we will have a 24/7 radio, internet radio. So it's very cultural. Right now, as a matter of fact, I have just children music, and then in the evenings, a few evenings, I have romantic music from back in the 50s. And then I also have a program that is folklorico music from Veracruz, and you know, just all that. And so I've been kind of working on that for about a month and a half. I finally got a 2-week trial. I'm working on it. And so this couple of weeks, I'll start my subscription. And so people can enjoy just basically cultural music, cultural programs, and so looking for content, and then also looking for permission for that. And so it's going to be really neat. So far, the people that have heard the station through the internet, they really enjoy it because, you know, the radio stations here, don't get me wrong, they do good work, but some of the music they play is really not cultural at all. And so I think it's deeply needed, and it's sort of like public radio about the Hispanic culture, and I don't think there's one in Oklahoma. The Gilchrist Museum, you know, they're going through remodeling. They're going to be, I think, done in 2023 or 22. I can't remember. But we did the Dia de Reyes 2 years ago, or 3 years ago, before the pandemic. And Gilchrist Museum, you know, and I think it's fair to say that most of the organizations or like museums, they lack diversity. So one of the things that we try to do with the Gilchrist Museum, Philbrook Museum, and some other entities in the Tulsa Art District is to have a more diverse people going inside their doors. And so Gilchrist has a lot of connection with the Hispanic community, but they're not doing enough to outreach. So we partnered to do Dia de Reyes, and then we have obviously partnered with the church because they have the costumes, they have the youth, so they can help us. They have the big elephant, they have all the props. And so we did it there at the Gilchrist, and we had over 2,200 people in Gilchrist, which is the most they've had ever. And so they saw that and they said, this is great. And most of the people were Hispanic, and most of them had never been to the museum. And so So that was one of the, and we're still working on, as a matter of fact, Gilchrist Museum, because they're going through this remodeling, might donate some furniture to Casa de la Cultura. But we still want to, and they will do some projects here. While they're closed, they'll do some projects here in Casa de la Cultura. Same with the Philbrook Museum. They want to do some outreach to the Hispanic community. And I think it's safe to say that I think our kids need more of that because of the budget cuts with arts funding. And, I think take whatever you can get out of it. And if we can play a part of that, good. To think of the things that I will discover by doing this project, because it really inspires me to find out more about the music. There's a program in Mexico back in the 70s. It's called El Chavo del Ocho. A lot of people don't know that the intro song was written by Beethoven, and back in the 1809, and then in 1811 he presented it again, and then from there it just evolved, and then from there it went to Russia, and then from Russia went to other, France. It just went all over the place until back in the 70s it landed in this program. It's just a melody, but the Chavo del Ocho is a very popular program from the 70s, and it still is on today. So people can, if they hear the song, they are going to, automatically is going to take them back to that time, but people don't know about the song, and some other songs that are, for example, San Serení dates back to the 19th century, but it's a song from Puerto Rico, so it was adapted by Puerto Rico. There are so many songs like that people don't know. A lot of the children's games, most of the music it dates back from, it came from Spain. So it's really interesting to find all this, and so I'm kind of eager to find out more things about this type of music. Being Oklahoma a red state, I think is very, well, I go back to 1998 when I organized the Hispanic Festival. And it was a very traditional festival with ballet folklorico dance from Mexico, some other groups that would do traditional music from Mexico. And you go to other festivals like Mayfest, you hear all this type of music. I think when people learn more about my culture, they'll understand me even more. And even for me, if I don't know their history, their culture, then it's going to be hard for me to know them. And I think music brings people together. And if we all enjoy different types of culture, then I think we can have a better Oklahoma, and not just closed-minded people that are very against the new change. The world changes. Even in the Hispanic community, day to day, the Hispanic face changes. You have your new immigrants, you have the established Hispanics, and then you have your suburban Hispanics. And sometimes the suburban Hispanic, his last name is Martinez, but doesn't know his history. So, they tend to lose their identity. And then you have the established Hispanics, you have people like me that are kind of live in both worlds. And of course you have the majority, which is the new immigrants in Oklahoma. And they still have some of those traditions. So to keep them alive is very important. And I think for other people to know more about our culture, the Hispanic culture, I think will bring us together. You can do a traditional song from Veracruz. It's called El Cascabel. Cascabel has some Afro influence in the state of Veracruz. So it's a little bit like this.